God's Word. Today, May 1st, and just want to remind you that you can find Little by Little, not only on Facebook and YouTube, on our website, calvarypa.org, on the Calvary Chapel Port Angeles app, as well as podcast. And you can subscribe to that podcast. Today, our readings are 1 Chronicles 14 and 15, Psalm 132, and Matthew 18. We're going to take a look in 1 Chronicles, kind of catch up a little with what's happening in David's life and the nation of Israel. Verse 8, chapter 14. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over all Israel, all the Philistines went up to search for David. But David heard of it and went up against them. The Philistines had come and made a raid in the valley of Rephaim. And here's the verse. And David inquired of God, "Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand?" And the Lord said to him, "Go up, and I will give them into your hand." When things are going the right direction, and it's not entirely true, because earlier in the chapter we're told that he took more wives, and remember, the Bible records things, doesn't mean it's recommended, and that would be in that category. But here, this happens throughout, as he's being chased by Saul, as he's king, when he stops and inquires of the Lord for next steps. It's always better. It's always better. The Lord answers him in his prayers. And it's something to think about, right? Are we consistently going to the Lord for our next steps? Or are we expecting to kind of figure it out and hope God blesses the path we choose? It doesn't seem like it's a big difference. It makes all the difference in the world. Because even when we're doing good things, if we're doing it in and of our own strength and our own power, we're missing out on the power of God. And if you're missing out on the power of God, what do God want to do or accomplish that is now not possible because it's in your strength? And maybe in your strength you could do whatever that thing is. But who gets the credit? Yeah. David inquired of the Lord. He says this in verse 11. And he went up to Baal Perazim, and David struck them down there. And David said, "God has broken through my enemies by my hand like a bursting flood." Verse 13. The Philistines yet again made a raid in the valley. Verse 14. And when David again inquired of God, God said to him, "You shall not go up after them. Go around and come against them opposite the balsam trees. When you hear the sound of marching in the tops of your balsam trees, then go up for battle, for God has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines." Verse 16. And David did as God commanded him, and they struck down the Philistine army from Gibeon to Gezer. And the fame of David went out into all lands, and the Lord brought the fear of him upon all nations. The Philistines keep coming back, and David keeps seeking the Lord. And the way in which God's going to get the victory this time, different than the last time. So it was crucial that David prayed and asked God, "What's next? Shall I go this way? Shall I go after them like before?" And God gave him different directions. And that's an interesting point, because sometimes we lean on what God has said in the past and kind of apply that to all kinds of things, and or expect him to work the same way in the future. The problem with that is we're relying on what God said before. We're not seeking him for a fresh word. We're not looking and seeking after the Lord for today. And I think God wants us to be in communication, in relationship with him, which means we're asking, we're seeking regularly, not just, a few years back I asked, and so therefore that's how it's going to go. That's what God's going to do. Truth is, we don't know what God has in mind. But we can know the mind of God. We can know the will of God. It's not this elusive thing. God will speak. Let's press in and listen. Till next time, keep growing little by little.